Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep beneath the surface to uncover the hidden and honestly often totally unconscious forces that drive our everyday behavior. If you've ever been completely baffled by a colleague's sudden sabotage, a friend's weird passive aggression, or maybe even your own inexplicable missteps, well, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's get into it. Okay, let's kick things off with a truly brilliant mindset shift. Imagine treating the meanness or just plain stupidity of difficult people not as some kind of personal attack, but as a fascinating new specimen for scientific study. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer suggested exactly this. Instead of getting all wrapped up in the emotional drama when someone crosses you, look at them the way a mineralogist looks at a rock. You just observe their behavior and say, fascinating, just data. This calm, detached, observant attitude, that's exactly the mindset we're going to adopt today.
Because let's be totally honest here, we don't just observe bizarre behavior in other people, right? We experience it ourselves. We all have those moments where we fall into self-destructive patterns or just inexplicably lash out. It leaves us feeling like there's this little demon, a stranger within us, operating completely independently of our own willpower. You suddenly blurt out something that offends your boss, or you enthusiastically throw your weight into a project that turns out to be a massive waste of time. We usually just shrug and say, something came over me. But really, what is that something? So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to embark on a journey of self-mastery by decoding the actual root causes of human nature. We'll be looking at the stranger within us, our primal evolutionary roots, the social media amplifier, deciphering the ultimate codebook, and finally, 5 actionable shifts to self-mastery. All right, let's dive right into section 1, the stranger within us. We're going to unmask the illusion of control. See, we all face this universal problem, our baffling inability to understand the ugly actions of others, not to mention our own surprising mistakes. As humans, we tend to live right on the surface. We react emotionally to what people say and do, and we comfort ourselves with this nice little myth that our behavior is largely conscious and willed. We love to imagine we're these rational beings sitting firmly in the driver's seat. But the frightening reality? It's actually the exact opposite. We are subject to forces from deep within us that drive our behavior, operating way below the level of our awareness. We see the results, our thoughts, our shifting moods, our actions, but we have almost zero conscious access to what's actually moving our emotions. When we feel anger, for instance, we aren't reflective. We just ride the wave of the emotion and point fingers, completely blind to the deeper roots that are actually triggering us. Moving right along to section 2, our primal evolutionary roots, and exactly why we're wired this way. To really figure out where this stranger within comes from and why we get triggered so easily, we actually have to leave the modern world completely behind and look deep into our evolutionary past. Over millions of years, our ancestors survived by developing an extreme permeability to the emotions of the group. And guess what? That ancient wiring is still actively hijacking our modern lives today. Before language was even a thing, our earliest ancestors depended entirely on communicating complex emotions like joy, shame, jealousy, resentment super quickly through facial expressions. They literally had to feel grief or joy as one single unit just to survive danger. Plus, traits like constant status ranking, which, by the way, we even see among chimpanzees, and the need to divide people into insiders and outsiders became completely hardwired into our nervous systems. That early development is alive and well inside us right now. Meaning underneath all our sophisticated tech, we are essentially just primates and business casual, constantly ranking our status. Which brings us to section 3, the social media amplifier. Or, as I like to think of it, throwing gasoline on ancient fires. Now, you might be tempted to think, hey, look at our technological progress. Surely we've evolved past all that primitive stuff. Well, not quite. We have actually never been more in the thrall of our primitive roots than we are right this very second. Because of the exact way we evolved, we are all pushed and pulled by a limited number of elemental forces that create highly predictable and honestly pretty destructive behaviors. We're wired to feel envy. We're wired to experience moments of grandiosity, to act irrationally, to conform to the group, and to display aggression. And for thousands of years, we've tried to cover up these animal roots by imagining we magically descended from angels instead of primates. What's really wild here is how modern platforms basically act like a giant magnifying glass. They heighten our emotional permeability and make it incredibly easy to play out our absolute darkest tribal shadows without any real-world repercussions. I mean, think about it. Our tribal tendencies have found literally the perfect medium. We find a group to identify with, we reinforce our primitive opinions in a virtual echo chamber, and then we demonize any outsiders, which leads straight to mob intimidation. The potential for mayhem coming from the primitive side of our nature hasn't decreased with technology at all. It has multiplied. Okay, that leads us right into Section 4, Deciphering the Codebook. This is your guide to the depths. So the million-dollar question is, how do we actually break free from being passive pawns to these viral emotions and toxic colleagues? If human nature is stronger than any institution or piece of technology, how do we stop it from moving us around like pieces on a chessboard? Well, to break free, we can turn to Robert Greene's masterwork, The Laws of Human Nature. This book acts as the ultimate codebook for deciphering our destructive behaviors by pulling together a whole century of psychological and scientific research. Drawing on pioneers in early childhood development, neuroscience, and primatology, it pieces together a brutally realistic appraisal of our species. And the best part, it doesn't rely on preachy moral judgments, it relies on hard evidence. It finally allows us to look below the surface. And finally, Section 5, 5 Shifts to Self-Mastery. We're going to transform you from a victim into a strategic observer. By leveraging this codebook, Greene outlines how we can radically alter our perspective and completely take back control. Refusing to come to terms with human nature pretty much dooms you to a life of confusion and helplessness. So let's look at the ultimate path to freedom. We're breaking this journey down into 5 actionable steps that build on each other. It's going to take you from someone who is emotionally drained by office politics and difficult friends and turn you into a master observer. Step 1, stop taking things personally. Seriously, you have to realize that people's anger or frustration usually stems from desires and disappointments that predate you by decades. You are just a convenient target, so free yourself from the emotional drama. When someone is cold to you or makes a snide comment, our instant reaction is to take it personally, right? We think, oh no, do they dislike me? But the reality is, they are almost always projecting their own deep-rooted issues right onto you. Once you actually grasp this, it's incredibly liberating. You stop judging them and start observing them. And ironically, that tolerant attitude usually makes people like you a whole lot more. Step 2. Mistrust your initial judgments. We are always in such a rush to put people into neat little categories based on our own preconceptions. You need to slow down. Start looking for opposites. Keep in mind that extreme displays of confidence or saintliness are almost always masks designed to disguise a person's dark shadow. If someone is overtly displaying hypermasculinity, for example, they're very likely concealing the exact opposite reality underneath. People are constantly playing to a public audience. If they do something that seems out of character, take note. That is usually their true character leaking out from behind the mask. Step 3 is a big one. Cut toxic types down to size. You need to anticipate the manipulative maneuvers of toxic people and just scoff at their elaborate cover stories. Your ability to remain that calm, detached mineralogist we talked about earlier, that will totally neutralize their power to intimidate you. Toxic types rely heavily on surprise and emotional manipulation. By identifying their games in advance, you absolutely refuse to be blindsided. Mentally focus on the glaring insecurities that are hiding behind all their bluster. If you just stay calm instead of getting dragged into their chaotic drama, it will infuriate them, which often pushes them into overreaching and making a stupid mistake. Step 4. Lower their resistance to influence. Look, we all know arguing just makes people defensive, right? The true lever of influence is actually altering your own mood to lower their resistance and confirming their self-opinion. People are naturally stubborn. When we hit resistance, our instinct is to lecture or cajole, which completely backfires every single time. Because of our deep evolutionary permeability to emotion, people are responding to your energy way more than your words. So to influence someone, you have to drop your own defensiveness. Focus on their self-interest and validate the self-opinion they so desperately need confirmed. By dropping your own ego, you actually gain the upper hand. Step 5, and honestly, this is the most absolutely crucial one. Confront the stranger within. Stop deluding yourself into thinking you are the magical exception. We are all cut from the exact same cloth, and recognizing your own dark shadow is the only way to break your negative patterns. It is so incredibly easy to read about narcissism, envy, or passive aggression and just point the finger at your boss or your ex. But we share the exact same evolutionary wiring. The greatest power you can achieve is examining your own motives and recognizing your own flaws. Doing that not only gives you incredible self-control, but it makes it infinitely easier to spot those exact same traits in everyone else. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a massive choice.
Will you remain a passive pawn to your primitive emotions, or are you finally ready to dive below the surface and become the master of the stranger within? These forces of human nature are operating right now, in your workplace, in your home, and deep inside your own mind. You can either ignore them at your own peril, or you can start observing them, studying them, and ultimately mastering them. The choice is yours.